Welcome to Hop Radio, an NDTV Hop Live production.
Welcome to Combating Coronavirus, the podcast where we talk about the global struggle against COVID-19. Today we'll be focusing on vaccines. Now I'm Deepat Maggie.
And I'm Priyanka Pant.
So, what is a vaccine and why is it so important in the fight against COVID-19? A vaccine injects antigens into the body, which teach your immune system to recognize whatever virus that vaccine is for. So in a situation without a vaccine, the virus would enter your body, your immune system would not recognize that it's a harmful entity, and the virus would just wreak havoc, as COVID-19 is doing right now. But if you've been vaccinated against that virus, your body's immune system recognizes that whatever is entering your body is harmful. So when an actual virus enters, your immune system kills it immediately. Now, why this is important against COVID-19 in particular is the concept of herd immunity. Herd immunity is when a sufficient quantity of people of whatever population sample you take are immune to the virus so that the virus has nobody to spread to. So we talked about the R naught value in the last episode. And if a person is going out into public and spreading COVID-19 currently to 3 people on average, it's spreading very quickly. However, if people in general are vaccinated against COVID-19 and the virus cannot spread to anyone, then of course people don't get it as fast. And whoever does get it, whoever hasn't been vaccinated or something, they can be controlled, they can be contact traced, and the virus can be controlled much more easily. So where are we currently, Priyanka, on a vaccine against COVID-19?
So I think, why a vaccine is important in the context of COVID-19. Most countries around the world are under some form of lockdown, right? There's lots of social distancing that's being encouraged. And the idea is to attempt to slow the spread of the virus. And if we have a vaccine, like you said, that'll definitely help ease restrictions eventually and help many of us sort of return to some form of normalcy. Now, the thing with vaccines is they can take years, even decades to develop. As of now, for the coronavirus, for COVID-19 specifically, optimistic estimates say that it'll be 12 to 18 months for a vaccine to be developed. But the good news there is that scientists around the world are working as hard as they possibly can to develop a vaccine. According to The Guardian, there's nearly 80 companies and academic institutions that are attempting to produce a vaccine, of which 5 are already testing their vaccines in people. So typically what happens for vaccines is that they're first tested on animals, specifically monkeys. Once that is deemed safe, then there's a small group of healthy volunteers who are initially given various doses of the pathogen, whether it's a low dose, a medium dose, a high dose. The scientists study the effect of what is happening, how people are reacting. Are there any side effects? Are people getting sick? Are people developing fevers? And only once scientists are 100% sure that it is safe, that they have figured out some sort of dosage level, that they go on to the next phase, which is phase 2. They test a larger group, based on the findings of what has happened in phase 1 of their clinical trial. And then phase 3 is a much larger group. And then, you're looking at the efficacy of the vaccine. How is it really helping people develop immunity against, for instance, in this case, COVID-19. So coronaviruses, although they've become a buzzword now, actually have been around for a while. There's been 2 previous epidemics in the world, SARS in China in 2002-2004, and MERS in the Middle East in 2012. So these are both versions of the coronavirus, the way that COVID-19 is. And in those cases, work around the world had already begun on vaccines. So in a certain sense, scientists already had the building blocks to figure out, okay, we have some idea of what this virus looks like. We potentially can figure out how to create a vaccine. However, what happened was those outbreaks were contained and then work on those vaccines stopped. So now scientists, what they've done is they've started working on vaccines for COVID-19. Some have bypassed that initial step of testing on animals and gone straight into human trials. And what that does is it helps kickstart or, reduces that timeline of getting a vaccine, which is why a lot of people are now saying that 12 to 18 months is a realistic timeline for us to get a COVID-19 vaccine. But of course, there are holdups.
Right. So one sentiment I've often heard people say is that, why is this taking so long? 12 to 18 months seems like a long time, especially when you have to be under lockdown for all that while. And why aren't we, putting all our resources into it and hurrying it up? Now, one of the reasons for that is that when you're developing a vaccine, you have to be very, very, very sure of what side effects it does or does not have. What you cannot risk at all is putting some sort of vaccine into production, which then harms people as much as it helps. So even if it has adverse side effects in maybe a tiny population of people, even that will, undermine public trust in vaccination. This happened in 2017 in the Philippines, where a school-based vaccination program for dengue fever had to be halted after the vaccine was found to increase the risk of severe disease in some cases. As a result of this, only 21% of people in the Philippines strongly agree that vaccines are safe, down from 82% before the incident. This is according to the New York Times. So yeah, you have to be really, really sure of the vaccine you put out, which is why it takes so much time and so many clinical trials before we have a final product. Now, even after we have a vaccine that is finalized and we know will help in our fight against COVID-19, that's not the end of our problems, is it?
No, in fact, that's where some of the problems may just begin, because COVID-19 is a virus that we've never seen before. Everyone the world over has been affected by it. And so everyone the world over is going to want access to the vaccine. Once the vaccine is developed, how do you make sure that you have the infrastructure in place to manufacture enough for every single person in the world? It can take pharma companies up to 6 months to figure out how to manufacture vaccines. And once you figure the manufacturing part of it, you also fall into the next challenge, which is figuring out who gets it and who gets it on priority. Is it going to be people who are at the front line in the battle against coronavirus? Is it going to be doctors, nurses, other healthcare providers? Is it going to be people that can pay more for the vaccine? Is it going to be richer countries that can, say, you know what, we want to buy this from you. We want to, you manufacture it. We're going to buy it and we're going to pay you X amount. It becomes a little bit about politics, it becomes a little bit about business. And we're already seeing parts of that happening, right?
Yeah, there was a report yesterday, reported by NDTV, among other people, that ICMR was saying that it had ordered 50,000 antibody kits from China, which were then diverted to the United States. In the United States, individual states have alleged that they ordered personal protective equipment, antibody kits, all of these things from China, which were then seized by the federal government at airports and then taken into the federal stock. So states couldn't get the resources that they had ordered. So this is already a problem. And of course, one can foresee it being a problem after the vaccine is developed.
Right. So that's a wrap on where we are in the race for a vaccine for COVID-19. But there is some good news, right, Divit?
Right. This episode's good news is that Bill Gates has a coronavirus plan. Now, he's funding the development of 7 different COVID-19 vaccines simultaneously. He's also funding the factories to manufacture all these vaccines simultaneously. Now, out of these 7, he says maybe at most 2 will end up being useful. Maybe only 1, maybe none of them, right? We don't know. But this is a way to make sure that we don't waste time waiting to find out which vaccine actually works before then starting to build the industry you need to manufacture it. So Bill Gates is just making industrial machinery to manufacture 7 different vaccines, which costs billions of dollars. But he says this is an important move to, curb the spread and have a vaccine as quickly as possible.
Yeah, so I think we still have no idea really when a vaccine will be ready, when it'll be available for us. But one additional good news is that an Oxford University professor has told the British newspaper The Times that a vaccine could be ready as early as September. Of course, in comparison to the 12 to 18 months that most other people are suggesting. So will that really happen? Will it be available to the public? Who really knows? With that, it's a wrap on this edition of Combating Coronavirus. This has been Priyanka Pant and Deepat Maggie. Thanks for listening.